Welcome to The Horror. I am your host and reviewer for the night. I'm Nate. Catch me on Twitter and Facebook at NateFlix. Find a lot of my reviews, writing, and podcasts at Frightflix on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. That's NateFlix with an X, Frightflix with a CKS. Tonight is my immediate reaction to the latest episode of Scream on MTV, episode 8. Usually, my partner at the horror, Mike, and I reviewed these together, and he's a huge Scream nut. Me, not so much. I like the first movie. I started checking out the show because it's horror-based, and I was hoping the horror would outweigh the teen drama. Hasn't been the case so far, but last episode and using the momentum from last week's episode, they sort of go full bore into episode 8, going more into horror territory than they have in the early part of the season. We pick up where we left off. The end of episode 7 was, without question, the greatest moment that the show has put out so far. Although it was off-screen, one of the regular cast members, Will, was cut in half. He was bisected lengthways by a tractor-mounted chainsaw, basically. That's where we pick up this week, with an excellent shot of Will's mother finding him, and finally they show you what he looks like, bisected lengthways. And it was awesome. It was the opening to this episode, was the best part of this episode, and maybe my favorite moment in the Scream series altogether. Because it was gross, it was shocking, it was over the top. That's exactly what can make horror great. Of course, after that, we have to get into picking up the pieces mode. Emma, who watched him die, is in shock. We get into some subplot stuff. I was really, really, really hoping that this was the episode that Brooke would die. And over the course of the episode, which there's a lot of Brooke stuff in it, this expectation kept ramping up. I was really hoping this was the episode because I don't like Brooke. I don't know if it's the character's fault or the actress's fault or both, but I don't like Brooke. So finally, we get some sort of wrap-up on this stupid Brooke's mother is missing and possibly been killed by her mayor father subplot, which now that the truth has come out that it wasn't actually her mother. Her mother is fine. It was just some random dude that's never been on the show before that died on accident. Now it really makes the entire subplot seem even more like a waste of time than it did before, and it seemed like a waste of time from the beginning. Well, now that's confirmed, that the whole thing didn't tie into anything. And she's pretty mad at her mayor father for that. It's the only way I can explain it, because you'd think that upon finding proof that her mother was alive and not having been murdered by her father, that Brooke would be relieved, but no, she's angry. She's angry at her imprisoned dad, so she storms off, and my desire to see her die just grows even more. We get into a lot of family stuff over the course of the episode for Emma, who has some Wes Craven-y faux Nightmare on Elm Street hallucination dream sequences stemming from her shock. Her long-absent father, who's now been put back into the mix as a suspect, finally shows up and shows his face. It's actor Tom Everett Scott, who you might recognize for something, or maybe not. But then it turns out that he didn't really show up. It was all in Emma's head. It was one of her hallucinations. But in any event, it does lead her to the realization, which is confirmed by her mother, that the tape she found in the bowling alley was legit. Dad was speaking of Brandon James as the monster, and how Daisy, Emma's mom, had banged Brandon James, which sort of put the idea on the table that Emma was Brandon James's daughter. That proves not to be the case tonight, as it was confirmed that Daisy did have Brandon James's child, but without ever having seen it or known whether the child is a boy or a girl, blindly gave it up for adoption, and she never found out who. She never knew anything about the kid, and the kid could be anybody. And then she immediately went back to town, hooked up with Emma's dad, and had Emma not too long after that. Which means that the son or daughter of Brandon James is Emma's half-brother or sister, and could be conceivably in her age group, could be older, I'm not sure what the timeline is there, but could be somebody in her class. And I kind of like that. In general, I kind of liked this whole episode. Everything kept moving, just like last episode. This is not a great TV show. Not everything is going to be awesome or, air quotes, make sense, end air quotes. But the narrative was moving forward, and they're introducing, 8 episodes in, it finally started getting interesting. Started in episode 7. The pace has finally picked up. So we get the Emma stuff, which leads us to we're on the brink of some sort of revelation there. And then we get more Brooke, who is hooking up with Mr. Branson. Branson, the teacher at the school, who has been the suspect du jour. Now it is more obvious than ever that it's totally not him. It couldn't possibly be him because he looks so guilty. They find out that Mr. Branson is really Mr. Palmer, who taught someplace up north, banged one of his students, and then the student got killed, so he took off, changed his name, and started teaching school and banging another student down here. Makes him look pretty guilty, right? And then Noah and Audrey are searching his classroom after hours, and they find a murder weapon, a knife that was used to kill, I don't know, maybe Riley, used to kill somebody. So the Scooby Gang takes this to the sheriff, and all of a sudden, everybody is convinced that Branson is the killer. We're in episode 8, and it seems like a lock. Oh, this guy must have done it. He seems so guilty. But if we've learned anything from the show and the whole mayor thing is that means that Branson is absolutely not guilty. Maybe he has a tie to this murder spree, but I had previously thought that maybe he was the brother of Brandon James come back to clear his name or something. I guess I was wrong about that, and I guess he has no tie to it. His only purpose of being there is a red herring. And just to put the bow on that, as he's getting ready to bang Brooke again, it was actually a really good set piece, set in the high school theater, which, what a phenomenal high school theater. Brooke gets stabbed, but doesn't die, wah wah, while Mr. Branson is conveniently in the other room, and he comes to her rescue just as the cops show up and arrest him for all the murders. So overall, I mean, the episode was a win. You cleared out some deadwood by getting rid of the mayor stuff. Hopefully that's all done for. You moved things ahead with the family reveal. You knew there was going to be an intergenerational family tie with the whole Brandon James current kill spree thing, so they stepped that forward with the Emma brother-sister stuff. And then they gave you a killer. They gave you the guy that is now confirmed as 100% not the killer because he's supposed to be the killer. So overall, I guess you could say it was a win. On the other hand, the negatives for the episode. There was a lot of Brooke, who's not good, nor likable, nor charismatic, nor interesting. There was no death this episode. Yeah, you got to see the fallout of Will getting cut in half, and that was awesome. It really was. But not enough murders on this show. Simply not enough murders. This show could have used another murder. Like, why didn't Brooke get stabbed to death, and then Branson gets arrested while he's holding her stabbed to death ass body? That would have worked, right? And then Brooke could have got killed. That would have been great. Overall, on a scale of 1 out of 10, I would give this episode a 6.5? No, we don't do 0.5s on this show, so we'll go 7. Just like last week's episode, this is a 7 out of 10. Now, this scale is relative compared to like other episodes of this show. If I was comparing this to something that I'm currently watching and reviewing on this YouTube channel, by the way, True Detective Season 1. Comparing it to a great show like True Detective Season 1, this episode was really like a 4 or 5. But in the context of what they're doing here and what they're building in the first season of Scream on MTV, I'd give it a 7 out of 10. And this makes the 2 best episodes of the show being episodes 7 and 8. If they can continue this momentum through episodes 9 and 10, then they may actually have me tuning in for a season 2. But that remains to be seen. I do have some ideas on who the killers are, and me and Mike will be discussing that on the new installment of Killer Theories. I also have some ideas on where I'd like to see the show go in season 2. This is also going to be coming up as a bonus for our YouTube followers next week. Thanks for listening to my Scream dissection. My name is NateFlix. Look for me on Twitter or Facebook. Check back in next week for another review.